are you doing?
Hi, Divya. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am good. Thank you so much for making time for this. And first of all, welcome back after your maternity break. Sorry,
Thank
let me correct myself, maternity leave.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for making time for this, especially when you're still caught up with your little one and transitioning back to work.
No problem. I am happy to be involved in things like this.
Yeah. So just a quick introduction of what this series called Supermoms of Cimpress is about. This is about cherishing, celebrating some supermoms around me like you, and learning from them through their experience of motherhood, maternity leave, and what it was like to transition back to work. So before we start, can we have a quick round of introduction of yours?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Tara Hecker, and I am a director of product management in Cimpress Technology. I've been here for about 7 years now, and always kind of focused on this area. Since joining Cimpress, I've had two children, so I've had two maternity leaves, and just returned from my most recent one in January of 2023.
Right. Okay, so let's begin our conversation. So let's first talk about your phase of motherhood. Can you tell me what it was like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was one of those little girls who always wanted to be a mom. I was so excited to have kids. I babysat a lot growing up. And so becoming a mother for me was really just a dream. And it is everything I dreamed of. I love it. I love being a mom. It's also just so challenging and so exhausting at times. Right now, I have young children. So I'm a mother of young children. I know every phase is a little different, but it can just be overwhelming. The amount of attention and needs that your children have, especially when they're young and still nursing and very dependent on you physically, can be really taxing. But I love being a mom. I've been so excited. I have two kids. One is 9 months, my son Remy, and the other is 2.5, Amelia, a little girl. And I absolutely love it. I think I was nervous to see how I would fit becoming a mom into my life. My social life, my career. I love to travel, and it just kind of happens organically. Once they're here, it just kind of works. They fit into your life, and you make it. You figure it out as you go. So it's really fun to watch them grow and discover new things every day. So it's definitely exhausting, but I love it. I'm really love being a mom.
I really loved how candidly you said that it's been your dream to be a mother.
I am. It's funny growing up. I didn't think like, oh, I didn't have a career dream. I just said I want to be a mom. And I didn't so much focus on like what I wanted outside of that. That was just my thought process growing up. So I've definitely evolved my thinking since then. But the core has always been there that I want to be a mom.
That's lovely. Okay, so while you were on your maternity leave, I'm sure you must have heard, experienced, or read of some myths and stereotypes around maternity leave. So would you like to highlight some of them for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that people often refer to maternity leave as a break, like maternity break. And that's a distinction that I think is actually really important because the way it frames being out for maternity is very different. It's definitely not a break. I mean, I think that you're late in your pregnancy, which is just exhausting in and of itself. Bringing a child into the world is exhausting physically, emotionally, mentally. And so, being on leave is, I think, one myth is that it's not time off. It's not just time away from work. It is work to be full time with your child and taking care of them, especially in those first few months. So that's one myth, I guess, is don't think of it as a maternity break. It's definitely a lot of work. It's just a different time of work, and your energy and focus is just completely elsewhere, outside of your career work. So that's one thing I would say. Another is I think there's a common perception that having children can set you behind in your career. And I know that that is true in many cases for many people, depending on industry. But for me, I think that was a myth and something that I want to encourage women to not be afraid of. And, should I start a family or should I pursue my career? Like what is that trade-off? And there's definitely trade-offs that need to be made, but I have found that you are able to do both. And it's hard. Being a mom is hard, being, successful in your career is hard, but you can do both of them and you just have to figure out what works for you. So one myth about maternity leave is, take the time, don't feel pressure to come back to work sooner than you're ready. I think that for me, I took the full 16 weeks that I was, awarded by Cimpress, my first pregnancy. My second, I took an extended leave and I was off for 6 months. And that's what I needed for me and my family. And, I was thankful that I was able to come back and kind of jump back in. So I think one myth is that you have to stay connected to work, you'll fall behind, you'll be forgotten. And I just didn't find that to be true for myself. And so I'd encourage women to help break that myth. Give yourself some separation if you need it, and disconnect fully to focus on you and your family, and trust that when you come back to work, they'll be ready and willing to accept you, and you can kind of get back at it without losing a ton of time. So that would be another myth I would call out.
Okay, so as we speak of maternity leave, what was your maternity leave was like? How was it? Did you also have sleepless nights and sleep deprived days? How was that?
Yes, definitely. I'll speak to my most recent one. So my maternity leave, all maternity leaves I think are exhausting and challenging. My son was born 8 weeks early, and so he was in the NICU for 6 weeks. And I'll try not to get emotional. So it was very hard, hard emotionally. We had a toddler at home. And so we were just in the hospital every day, trying our best to take care of him in ways that we could. And so that was just very emotionally stressful and physically stressful. It's exhausting, traveling back and forth, trying to pump milk. So I think that was really a unique challenge. I know there's other NICU parents. If you want to reach out, I'm here, always supporting that community. But I think that once we got him home, we were able to really start our family of four with my daughter, my son, and my husband. And so maternity leave was exhausting. You don't sleep. If people have newborns who sleep, that's amazing. Congrats to you. My children, wake up frequently to nurse at night, and, disrupted sleep. That's normal for newborns. And so I think that you're kind of in survival mode. And I would describe that as my maternity leave is really in survival mode to, keep yourself alive, keep your kids alive, hopefully keep them happy, and then try to enjoy the moments in between when you're not exhausted. It was full of a lot of snuggles, a lot of walks outside, that helped with my mental and physical health. So I enjoyed maternity leave. And part of the reason I took a longer leave is because I knew for myself, I wanted to enjoy some of it and not just be exhausted and sleep deprived and then have to go back to work. And so, I was excited and thankful that Cimpress offered me that flexibility.
Now that you're back to work and it hasn't been too long ago, how was it like for you to transition back to work after 6 long months when so much has happened already in between?
It's definitely challenging. I think that I tried to approach the transition back, especially after the second maternity leave, by giving myself time to kind of get up to speed. And I was really thankful. Both my colleagues and my manager were also supportive in that way. The first thing almost everyone said to me after asking me how I was and how the baby was, hey, take your time. Like, here's some information. Let me know when you're ready to talk about it. But ease your way back into work. And that was tremendously helpful because I think, as I mentioned earlier, women put a lot of pressure on themselves to be able to come back and perform, exactly how they were before, be right back in the place that they were. And the reality is you do miss some context. And so giving yourself time to get up to speed, almost as if you're starting a new job, and really get that context back, kind of get back in work mode, try to figure out that balance of being a working parent, having your child at home, and making that transition from wholly focused on your child to splitting your attention between work and taking care of your kids is difficult. But the transition happens. And I think that though it was difficult at first, by a few weeks in, I was feeling more and more comfortable. I was reminded that my career is something that's important to me, something that's core to my identity, is being, working in the work that I do, the people I work with. And so I think that coming back into the working world was a good reminder of that. It's also nice to talk to adults more, right? You spend all day with a baby and a toddler. It's a very different challenge, but not necessarily a mentally stimulating challenge. And so coming back to that headspace is difficult in ways, but it's also really refreshing. So there's challenges coming back. I think it's always emotional for mothers to return to work. And I won't speak for all mothers, but for myself, it was really emotional to kind of make that transition from all day with my children to then being working and having childcare and things like that. So dealing with those emotional aspects are also hard, but ultimately the transition went as smoothly as you could hope, coming back from such a big life-changing experience.
It is a lot. It is a lot.
It is. It's a big life change, just like any life change. It's an adjustment.
Yes, now that you have experienced it twice in your life, being mom twice and going through that phase twice, how, according to you, can organizations make this transition better, make the maternity break better for the new mothers?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, I took 16 weeks, my first break, or my first, not break, my first leave. And I was really thankful for that, but I was not ready to return. And so I think that, there's often a lot of flexibility offered to parents, mothers in particular, to say, hey, like transition back slowly, maybe use some PTO. That way you come back 3 days a week or 4 days a week. I think that's great as a benefit, but I would like to see it formalized. I think that, it shouldn't depend on your manager whether or not you have that flexibility. And so having some formal structures or guidance for managers, especially managers who haven't dealt with a maternity leave before, or maybe struggle to be as empathetic because they aren't parents themselves or haven't experienced it. I think that having those structures more formally in place for longer leaves, extended leaves, slow transitions back would be really valuable. I think there's a lot Cimpress does well already. There's a lot of support offered. I know both through my manager, my colleagues, in an informal way, but also through ERGs or special interest groups. There's a SIG Career Moms. I know there's Women at Work. So there's support networks in that way that can help that transition be easier. One thing that might be nice is to have a more formal buddy program, kind of like when you first start and you get assigned a buddy, when you return to work, to have a person that you can look up to and go to with questions, concerns, frustrations, sadness that you're returning to work, and talk those things through. I was lucky enough to have mentors that were female that had children, that I could have that connection and they could kind of coach me through what I was feeling and how to return and things like that. But I think offering a program like that would be really valuable. And then the other thing I would call out is, even though Cimpress is more generous than other companies, especially in the US, where maternity leave is not, I think, to the bar that it should be, I really think that offering longer maternity leaves or a leave of absence and then guaranteed a job when you come back would be huge. I know for myself, I've worked really hard. I've been really successful in my career and really thankful for the opportunities I've had here. But I did feel like I had to decide, should I come back to work or not? Because those early months are so exhausting and stressful, and you feel like, oh my gosh, I can't do anything besides be a mom right now. And had I not had a longer maternity leave, I might have not returned to the workforce. And that's just a personal thing. But for me, the decision was much harder. And once you get to, that like 6-month mark, 9-month mark, the child's a little older, at least in my experience, you feel much more sane and you're like, okay, I can do this. I can do both. Whereas when in some places they have, 6 to 8 weeks or 12 weeks, and that's just not enough time for a mother to feel prepared to come back to work, was my personal experience. So I think that offering longer maternity leaves or options for taking leaves of absence, that way a mother doesn't have to make a decision, should I work or stay home, but they can have a longer transition period, would go a long way in keeping women in the workforce and in better supporting working mothers.
It's precisely why you are a super mom, because you chose to come back.
Thank you.
Thoughts already.
Thank you. Yeah, the balance is difficult, but ultimately, you work it out. Just like anything, any challenge that comes at you or anything new in your life, you figure it out and move forward. And that's what I think all super moms have to do, and hopefully do with some success.
Yeah. So just as we close, would you like to share a few tips for the new mothers or to-be mothers, how to sail through this period?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that some advice I would offer is try to enjoy the time that you can. It can feel stressful and overwhelming, but the early days of motherhood are also really special and really unique, and they do go by quickly. And so as much as you can enjoy those moments with your baby and snuggles and cuddling, try to, compartmentalize a little and say, okay, that thing can get done later. I'm just going to take this time to be with my children or be with my child. The other thing I would say is, if you have a support system, lean on them. And I think that's hard for a lot of new moms to ask for help or know what help to ask for. And so I was really thankful for my, work community and for my personal community to offer me as much support as they did, both in terms of sending things to the house like food and clothes, but also coming to physically be there and help me with chores and watch my children and cook me dinner. Those things make a huge difference. And so as much as you can, and hopefully do have a support system, lean on them and don't be nervous to do that. I would also say, enjoy the maternity leaves. Try not to divide your focus and be worried about work or returning to work. We really do have maternity leave as a protected entity. That way we can enjoy being home and not have to stress about our job. And I don't want people to feel like they have to stay connected in order to come back to work and succeed. I hope that I can prove as an example of completely disconnecting. I pretty much didn't talk to anyone for 6 months, except for to send them pictures and check in to see how they're doing from a work perspective. And I was still able to come back and be welcomed back into my role and into my team and get back up to speed. So, that would be a key takeaway is on your maternity leave as best as you can. And if it's right for you, disconnect, enjoy the time, and don't feel pressure to stay connected to work, because work will be there at the end of your maternity leave and you will be able to successfully transition back.
So thank you so much, Gareth. That is all that I had from my end. And thank you very much for sharing these personal anecdotes and opinions with me, and especially our audience. I think this would certainly be very helpful for some of the women out there undergoing the same phase as you, and you're generally considered to be the most important one. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Divya. And anyone can reach out to me. I'm happy to try to serve as a source of information or support for anyone who needs it. I know that it's really challenging becoming a mother, being a working mother. So please, if you're watching this and have questions or support, do reach out.
Sure. Thank you so much again.
Yeah. Thank you, Divya.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.